Welcome to Manufacturing Matters, a podcast sponsored by Simsbury Bank. Welcome to this episode of Simsbury Bank's Manufacturing Matters. My name is Martin Geitz. I'm President and CEO of Simsbury Bank, and I'm delighted to be here for a second visit to the Manufactory here in downtown Hartford with Sudhi Bangalore. Sudhi is the Global Vice President with Stanley Black & Decker, responsible and the visionary who created this wonderful facility for research, development, and deployment of advanced manufacturing right here in downtown Hartford. When we were first here back in November or December, this was all pretty much open space. But now as we come through, it's fully developed, and all of the activities that you were describing to us back in the fall are now fully at work. And I'm wondering, Sudhi, how has it all come together? Are you happy with the way it's all come together?
Again, thank you, Martin, for revisiting us so we can actually show things that we talked about. In manufacturing, a lot of things matter, but the most important thing is just to really show things. So I'm really glad that I'll be able to show things that we talked about when you visited us a few months. And yes, things have really come together nicely in terms of a couple of things. One is we really have solutions now that we're deploying in our factories that are working in this center, that it gives us that ability gives us more credence and confidence with our people that will use it in their factories. So to that end, it's a really significant milestone. The other thing that it is giving us, obviously, is the ability to attract more talent. We've always had a good ability in terms of attracting talent with this important initiative, but now when people come in and actually see the setup, it's literally for all of the comments we've heard, the comments have been so positive, and it gives us an additional edge, if you will, to attract and hire some of the best talent there is in the market. And there's not many, by the way, in this space.
Right. That's fantastic. Has anything evolved differently than what you initially thought? Now, once you put things into place and begin to actually use them, have things evolved at all from the original thought about how your factories around the world would interact with this laboratory and this manufactory, and how employees and the workforce would leverage the great resources that you have here?
That's a good question, actually. Yes, it has evolved in a few ways. The first thing that has happened over the last few months is the fact that we continue to see macroeconomic trends that are not exactly stable for us, given that there's such a high and active dialogue around trade, tariffs, and so on.
Yes.
So to that end, what has happened is we are now sequencing our solutions differently, prioritizing our solutions differently. So we need to accelerate the impact that we need to drive, so we can then help mitigate some of the tariffs that we will see based on everything that we are seeing in the news. So to that end, that is the first change that we are seeing. So high level of urgency to get smarter in terms of what we can deploy sooner. And also there's a second implication of that. Just to set the stage, this center and this whole program is a two-speed organization. By that I mean there is one speed, which is to really take solutions that have already been proven. For example, the connected factory that allows us to deploy IoT, that stands for Industrial Internet of Things, IIOT, into our factories. Well, that's a fairly proven technology, so we are deploying that and a few others like cobots, etc. But then there are use cases or solutions that are not proven yet, and those solutions obviously have higher value that they bring, but by the same token, there's a lot of effort that goes into research and development around that. So with that as a backdrop, what we're now seeing is not only do we have to deploy the proven solutions faster and smarter, but also put more focus on the higher value, yet to be proven solutions category as well. So that is obviously, again, posing challenges and opportunities both for us to attract talent to go after the higher value use cases and the research of those.
Yeah.
So to that end, that's the second dimension of impact that the macroeconomic conditions are, for lack of a better word, forcing us to fast forward.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's fascinating that the trade issues, the tariffs, real life impact on any manufacturing company, Stanley Black & Decker and certainly everyone else, in your ability to deliver to your customers the products that you want to deliver at a price that they're willing to pay around the world.
Yeah.
And it comes to mind that what you've just described is really the business case for
Yes.
how important the Manufactory 4.0 is, for how important this investment that you have made, Stanley Black & Decker has made in this organization here is being forced to prove itself, and in fact is proving itself because of this unexpected urgency around being able to respond to the
Yes.
tariffs and to the trade wars that seem to be bubbling there, and really provides an opportunity, if you will,
Yes.
to really demonstrate how important this investment is for the entire company to be able to move quickly into advanced manufacturing. It's remarkable how real life events create an opportunity. It may be painful and puts a lot of pressure on people clearly,
Yeah.
but it really does kind of provide the proof point of the wisdom of this investment.
Yeah, and that's why I carefully mentioned it's a challenge and an opportunity. To your point, the opportunity is, hey, how do we use this scenario, if you will, to fast forward some of those things we were planning on doing anyway. The other thing it allows us to do is get ahead of our competition, right? As we have, as our CEO has mentioned before, scoured the world to find a center like this in industrial, and there are not many. In fact, we haven't found any.
Yep.
So to that end, this is a unique investment, and to that end, we want to leverage it and sweat it the best way we can. So it gives us the agility to react to these scenarios in a more intelligent and thoughtful manner, and also gets us ahead of the competition.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. So I understand at Stanley Black & Decker there are sort of three value streams or three themes that kind of overarch the strategic approach that Stanley Black & Decker takes to its businesses. There's the connected factory, flexible automation, and advanced analytics. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you're integrating the Manufactory 4.0 into those broader Stanley Black & Decker themes.
Yes. So these three streams, the technology streams you mentioned, Martin, is our demarcation, if you will, in terms of, as I mentioned before, for example, connected factory is fundamental. I mean, we cannot do analytics if you don't connect assets and get data. You cannot do collaboration across our factories and within factories if we don't have connected factory. So it's almost it's akin to the fiber optic cable that we laid down across the country and across the globe a few decades ago, right? A decade, 15 years ago. So it's as straightforward as that. So this is really fundamental. So we've got, I would say, almost a rhythm to how we are deploying this connected factory solution across our factory landscape. And then of course, flexible automation that includes cobotics that allows people to work with technology, robots, has been a good success for us. We started deploying them starting January, and our people love it because it allows them to do more work that has more thought and gives them paths forward in their career that didn't exist. So now they actually, we have seen instances where workers now who are very apprehensive of robotics and cobotics now actually managing 3 or 4 cobots because now they've suddenly gotten upskilled and they love it. So they can do more, work that leverages their mind and their skills much better. What has been a development that's worth mentioning in a positive way is analytics. Analytics has been, obviously we have seen analytics work really well in our social setting, in the social world. But in manufacturing, it has taken a while for it to really start yielding results. And we have started in the last 3 months, we have seen some good progress. In fact, pleasantly surprised at the kind of impacts we're seeing. And that has to do with what we call as video-based analytics and vision-based analytics. So we have so many cameras now. Every one of us have cameras that are high resolution, can capture data and pictures and so on. So we use that. We use video-based analytics to do, for example, analytics around why we're causing scrap when we make tape, right? Or things like that. So there's several opportunities where we are now putting a few cameras around what we build, and then we can predict if the quality is going to go down, if there are some things upstream that we can do better in terms of inspection and so on of the materials, that then helps us to improve the quality of our products. So to that end, it is very cost effective because cameras are not all that expensive. Sure. And then so that has been a very positive development for us. And in fact, this has been across the industry. There's the same trend we see in the oil and gas industry and heavy industrial and so on.
Right.
So that has been a very good thing. And we are obviously jumping on that with both feet now with that stream of analytics. And we're putting everything we have so we can deploy them faster.
That's remarkable. You think about any kind of sports on television, right? The instant replay.
Yeah.
And you use the instant replay to figure out what went right or what went wrong in the play. What you're describing is how you basically, through video, you're able to to do the same sort of thing,
And not only, I forgot to mention, acoustic is the next, acoustic analytics is the next wave of value that we expect to get. Because now, when things go wrong, like you're in your car, you can hear them, right?
Yeah.
So the same philosophy applies with industrial equipment and settings. So they, putting the right kind of acoustic sensors and being able to mine that information to again improve the quality of what we build and the amount that we build. And in other words, efficiency of our production goes up significantly. So that's going to be the next complementary technology that we will deploy.
That's remarkable, and this illustrates, just what you talked about in our first interview, which was, what is Industry 4.0? What is Manufacturing 4.0? And it's the integrating of all of these
physical assets
with technology and so forth. And there you just described an example of how it all comes together. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
So that has been a positive development.
Yeah.
And so we're putting a lot of focus in terms of how we can get our technology partners to help scale up, because now we know it works. Now it's all about how do we quickly then deploy these technologies, making sure again that when we do deploy these technologies that our people are part of that. Because the game ends when you deploy technology that our people are either skeptical about it or they feel that it is not of use to them.
Right.
So that has always been, in my opinion, the critical differentiation of this program. It'll continue to be so.
Yeah, remarkable. So one of the other things we talked about back in the fall was your expectation that you would deploy this resource not only for the benefit of Stanley Black & Decker, but also to work with small and medium-sized businesses that might have some interest in what you're doing here and be able to tap into your resources. Has that piece of the effort come to fruition yet?
It is moving in the right direction. To be candid with you, I would like to see more speed with that. We've had a couple of tours, if you will, and companies that are very interested to now, after the opening of this center, to come in here and take a look at some of the solutions we're creating. And then we're also, as part of that effort, in terms of promoting what we have at the small to medium business, the state and the city organizations are helping us bring people and create a consortium, if you will, that allows us to then take what we have and other companies that might have built something similar and then test it in a small to medium business setting. So there's some infrastructure needs to make that happen. So that is happening as well. So I would describe it as that whole opportunity is in motion, and hopefully it'll pick up more speed, so that we can at least have 1 or 2 or 3 pilots in terms of our ability to take what we have and put it in other businesses and see how it works. Hopefully by the end of this year. So at least that's the goal that I'm setting for myself.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. You were touching earlier on the value of the Manufactory to attract great people into Stanley Black & Decker. You want to talk a little bit more about that? And are you able to find people here in Connecticut? Are you recruiting people from other parts of the country or other parts of the world who are finding what you're doing here and its impact on Stanley Black & Decker around the world to be more appealing because of what you're doing here?
We're doing a good job. I think we have done a good job in terms of attracting talent. As I mentioned in another interview, I was pleasantly surprised at our ability to attract talent in with this whole initiative, given where we were located, and then we've had good success in attracting talent. So the initial wave of talent mostly came from out of state, which I think is a good thing, because people moved all the way. I've had instances where people have moved from Texas and Michigan and so on into this facility, and so that has been good. And then in fact we had people move from other parts of Europe into the U.S. For this program. But lately, what we're also doing is to tap into the local talent, which primarily, given the nature of Hartford, there's a lot of talent around financial and insurance and aerospace. We're now attracting talent from those industries and see how we can kind of tune their expertise into what we do, because our industry is slightly different. It is discrete manufacturing. But then technology, to a certain extent, is common across any businesses. So we were seeking that commonality and see if we can use that commonality to leverage talent that exists here. So we've slowly started making that pivot. So that way we can actually attract local talent and in fact groom talent. That'll be the next step, which we have started to do.
Fantastic, fantastic. So maybe one other question, and then we'll take a little tour around and talk more. It comes to mind. So you're integrating what you're doing here into your factories around the world, and I'm sure that takes time and it's a process and so forth. So the factories that you are working with now, how would they describe the benefit of what they can leverage from what you're doing here and the information that you have here? How would they describe the change that they're experiencing thanks to what you're doing?
The first, I think, reaction you would get if you were to talk to some of our people in our factories is they are very hopeful. They have heard so much about technology in the media, and obviously our own communication setup that we have within the company. We use Workplace, which is sort of like Facebook. We have the largest population in a business using Workplace, and so it's been a very effective medium for us to communicate. So there's a lot of news that we put out in terms of sharing success stories of this program using that medium. So based on, as I said, external media and our own media within the company, you would hear our people say that they're very hopeful in terms of how it'll change, at least the ones that have not yet received the technology. And for the ones who have received technology from this center and this program, they are obviously, you would hear that it is working out well. Of course, there are kinks in terms of how it can be better. But for the most part, what we have heard is there is a resounding acceptance to this technology. What's interesting about our user group, if you will, in our factories, you have the younger generation, the millennials, the 23 to 30-year-olds, and also the 50 and on up. We see both of these pockets have the highest attraction to this technology. So we have found the dynamic to work really well.
Yeah.
And I've heard of this and read about this in even the financial industry in Netherlands, for example, insurance industry.
Yeah.
They did a couple of exercises there, and it was very similar there. So it goes against the common notion that, oh my goodness, the older you get, you can't use technology.
Right.
But it depends on how you present the technology
Right.
and who is actually, for lack of a better word, selling the technology to you, right? If
Right.
you're in the 50-something age group. So that has been a fantastic dynamic for us.
Yeah.
So you will get to see all of the folks that are actually helping us deploy this technology in our factories fall in these two categories.
Yeah.
So the older generation, or the wise sages, if you will, helping the younger generation with the finer points of how business works in a factory.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
younger generation is all about just soaking it in and saying, hey, this is how life works.
Yeah.
And so it's been a great learning to watch this dynamic play out.
That's very interesting, generationally, because and sort of what comes to mind is, who has an appetite for change? Because
Yeah.
everything that you're doing
Right.
is you're changing the way
Yeah.
manufacturing occurs, and so younger people generally are very open to and question everything and want to know, well, why do we do it this way? Why don't
Yeah.
we, right? And people who are experienced and have probably been through enormous change in the course of their lives and have an appetite for, let's get it right. Let's do it their way. So that's very interesting that the sort of the two ends of the age spectrum are the ones who are most willing and accepting of change and investing energy and trying to do things better, which is.
And I want to add one last point, if you don't mind, and I was reflecting on why that is so. If you're 50-something and you have very little motivation for change, I think what helps to be not that case is if you really like what you're doing and you like the company that you're working for.
Yes.
And I tend to believe that these folks who are in our factories, whether they came with an acquisition or have been a part of the original Stanley family, there's so much pride with the brand, and there's so much they care.
Right.
And when you do that, then you want all of the levers that the technology has to offer and others to offer to use it to your advantage. So you want to be still, even though you're slightly older, you want to be part of the company and part of this movement.
Right.
So that's at least my thinking as to why everybody is they're putting the best foot forward as opposed to saying, this is not going to work,
Right.
which tends to be the opening position for a lot of things with
yeah.
change.
Well, it speaks well to Stanley Black & Decker's culture, right?
Yeah.
You must have a culture that supports and invites and encourages
Yeah.
everything that you just described. And that's so important to the success of any company. If you've got the right culture,
Yep.
your folks are going to behave in the way that moves the ball forward and allows you to achieve the great goals that you have. So Sudhi, we've talked a lot about how your Manufactory 4.0 is integrating itself into Stanley Black & Decker and all the wonderful things you're doing. That's a lot of work every day. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious about how do you manage this day to day? How do you run this operation day to day?
That's a really good question, Martin. So the way we are set up in terms of my org structure is we have leaders who are helping build these solutions, and then they're then obviously real busy in terms of now making sure that these solutions work with our factories and are helping deploy these technologies. But the center itself is being then managed and run by Methuselam, who joined us from a local aerospace company. He's got a great track record of being very hands-on, very creative. So he is now the manager of this setup. So his charter really is twofold. One, making sure that the solutions we're creating is working with all of the twists and turns that happen when you have a solution. You add functionality, you change it. So his job is to make sure that it continues to work seamlessly and then communicate that to the outside world. And the second thing that he does is then to make sure that he adds new technology to ensure that we can now test everything that we build here before it gets deployed. So think of it as a test organization that can make sure that everything works together well. So when we do go to our factories, we spend very less time tweaking some of these solutions in the factory. So that's those are two important jobs or roles that he plays. And so you'll be meeting him when we take a tour of this facility.
Excellent, excellent, wonderful. As Sudhi mentioned, we're very fortunate to have Methuselam DeMello here as well. Methuselam is the manager of the Manufactory 4.0 here in Hartford. And I wonder, Methuselam, if you could talk a little bit about what's the work that you do out in the floor to solve problems and find new ways and innovative ways to enhance your manufacturing and warehousing and other challenges you have as a company.
All right. So we dividing the manufacturing to help the two of our business units. So Stanley Engineer Fastener and Global Tooling Storage or GTS. Engineer Fastener, you see bolts from helicoils that goes in iPhones and bolts that go into the bridges that we have today. And GTS, we have the dual drills and all the hand tools and so on that you find at Home Depot and Lowe's and so and such, right? So here with our space, we take use cases from the floor, from all those 115 factories that we have. We bring in here and we use the 3 pillars of our group with automated robotics and automation, advanced analytics, and connected factory. It doesn't need to be in particular order. What you see on the floor here, it's a flavor of each of those connected, bringing to the connected enterprise. It takes data and then move material and so on. So on the we have a warehouse, we have machine tending, we also have assembly and palletizing and logistics, which you take cobots and mobile robots with advanced analytics to give you that, to help you make decisions on the floor. And that's the use cases, you take use cases and bring into details based on that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So basically doing everything that you say you want to do here, integrating technology with processes in a way that allows you to do things more efficiently, more effectively, with greater precision, greater quality, and ultimately more lower cost.
Correct.
Fantastic.
And one of the main things that it was able to help us to do is to create the digital twin, which again, it will lead to a digital thread. So we have digital twin of the process today, we have digital twin of the assets, and in the future, there will be a digital thread, which will bring really from the very top ERP all the way to the shop floor and give you the ability to operators, value stream managers, plant managers, the ability to make decisions on the fly and finding leads so they can really improve their process and quality and so on.
Yeah, absolutely remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. Real-time information to solve problems and allow people to be more effective in pursuing the work that they do every day.
All right.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Great work. It's been wonderful to meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Methuselam.
All right.
Well, good. Well, why don't we take a little walk around and see what's now in place? Because when we were here back in the fall, there was a lot of open space, and now you have a lot of interesting things going on here.
For sure.
So this was a big empty room when we were here in the fall, and now look at it. It is full of technology and full of lab. Basically, it's a laboratory, right?
Yeah, it's a lab, but it'll turn. I would like to call it a solution center, if you will. A lab, primarily, the connotation is, hey, if you're playing with things, we hope it works,
no,
right?
That's not what it is.
So this really is a solution center.
Yeah.
Will we do some research and playing around? Of course we do. And that's why we have all the equipment and the setup. But for sure, this is a solution center.
Yeah.
And a couple of things, the highlights of this setup. As you can see, we call this a connected enterprise. Without connection, nothing. It's hard to make Industry 4.0 work. So to that end, this whole setup represents what we call as connected enterprise, which means that it's not just connecting our people assets within factories, but also connecting factories and our supply chain and our customers together. And that forms a connected enterprise. Okay.
Good.
So Martin, the way we are going about our business of deploying technology is to focus on a couple of critical processes for us. And if you look at the processes that we are focusing on, how we actually make our warehouses work is really important. Obviously, that's where we receive material on one hand, and then when all of the finished products also go back to a warehouse. There's several types of warehouses, so our ability to do this function really well is important. So there's a lot of focus and impetus in how we digitize those processes and make them more efficient. So that is the first process. The second process is machining. Obviously, we do a lot of machining in terms of the products we build, such as the fastener systems that we make, and the fasteners we make millions of fasteners, small and big. So machining is a really important operation, and there's a lot of opportunities there in terms of digitizing and bringing technology to and help it get to the next level. The third is, of course, assembly. A lot of our tools. All of our tools that we make, the power tools, the hand tools, and so on, there's a lot of assembly that happens. There's a lot of kitting that happens. Millions of these sets get made all around the
Pieces
world.
and parts.
Exactly.
All have to come together to make.
Yes, exactly right. So some are very precise, some are not. And so what you're seeing here is how do we take manual operations and gradually move them over to automated and make them also more intelligent. So that is assembly. And then, of course, the palletizing and logistics is a key operation for us. So there's a lot of focus and attention that we're paying into how we can actually take some of these, we call it triple D, the dirty and dangerous operations. What you're seeing here is an example of that, where these are mundane operations. Sometimes it can be, it's sort of, not very safe for humans, so we're replacing it with technology.
Remarkable. Absolutely.
Well, great. Well, that was fascinating, Sudhi, to see how all of the ideas that you had and your team have come to fruition here and are actually helping Stanley Black & Decker solve manufacturing problems real time, real life, every day. Anything else you wanted to add at this point on the progress we've made here?
First, I also want to add that what you're doing in terms of promoting manufacturing, as your title says, Manufacturing Matters, it's really important. And so I want to thank you and your team for making that a prominent part of how you support manufacturing in general and manufacturing in Connecticut. So and the city of Hartford. So I think it's really important. Thank you for that. And I love to be and have loved participating in some of the events that you've organized around this whole theme. So I want to make sure that I make a mention of that. And in terms of what's to come, as I said, what I would love for you to do is come back during the holidays. That's come in. It's a while away, but somewhere about Christmas, we would love to talk about. I would like to talk about the progress we would have made in terms of the small to medium business initiative that I talked about. And hopefully I can share more stories of success with our technology, which could help some of the audience that would be listening to your podcast to leverage our work much better. So I'm really looking forward to see how we can not only, as I mentioned many times before, is not only serve our own constituents within Stanley Black & Decker, but also the larger business of manufacturing.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your kind words about our effort to promote manufacturing here in Connecticut, because it is so important to our local economy. But honestly, what Stanley Black & Decker and what you, Sudhi, have done here in downtown Hartford with the Manufactory is just such an important investment in Connecticut and in manufacturing in Connecticut. And I'm just delighted that we have the opportunity to share that with our listening audience and our viewing audience. And I definitely look forward to coming back later in the year to hear more about how you're integrating and how you're working with small and medium-sized businesses. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and congratulations to you and your team and Stanley Black & Decker on this wonderful achievement.
Thank you so much, Martin. It's always been a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you again.
Great. So that wraps it up. That wraps up this episode of Simsbury Bank's Manufacturing Matters. I'm Martin Geitz, President and CEO of Simsbury Bank, and we look forward to sharing with you more great stories of manufacturing in Connecticut in the future.